Power and influence in the workplace. Learning objectives. 10.1 Describe the dependence model of power and describe the 5 sources of power in organizations. 10.2 Discuss the 4 contingencies of power. 10.3 Describe 8 types of influence tactics, 3 consequences of influencing others, and 3 contingencies to consider when choosing an influence tactic. 10.4 Explain how people and work units gain power through social networks. 10.5 Identify the organizational conditions and personal characteristics that support organizational politics, as well as ways to minimize organizational politics. Managing your manager. Managing your boss is the process of improving the relationship with your manager for the benefit of both of you and the organization. It includes developing bases of power that enable you to influence the manager and thereby achieve organizational objectives. The meaning of power. Power is the capacity of a person, team or organization to influence others. 1. Potential, not actual use. 2. People have power they don't use and they may not know they possess it. 3. A perception. Power and dependence. Person B's countervailing power over Person A. Person A. Person A's control of resource valued by Person B. Person B. Person A's power over Person B. Resource desired by Person B.
Model of power in organizations. Sources of power. Legitimate. Reward. Coercive. Expert. Referent. Contingencies of power. Substitutability. Centrality. Discretion. Visibility. Powers over others.
Sources of power. Legitimate. Agreement that people in certain roles can request certain behaviors of others. Based on job descriptions and mutual agreement. Legitimate power range, zone of indifference, varies across national and organizational cultures.
Sources of power continued. Reward. Ability to control the allocation of rewards valued by others and to remove negative sanctions. Operates upward as well as downward.
Sources of power continued. Coercive. Ability to apply punishment. Exists upward as well as downward. Peer pressure is a form of coercive power.
Sources of power continued. Expert. The capacity to influence others by possessing knowledge or skills that they value. More employee expert power over companies in knowledge economy.
Sources of power continued. Referent. Occurs when others identify with, like or otherwise respect the person. Associated with charismatic leadership.
De Courcy's trendspotting power. Colleen De Courcy has developed a reputation as a trend spotter, giving her considerable information power in the advertising industry. Her knowledge of the digital landscape, grounded in creativity, makes her an invaluable addition to TBWA, says De Courcy's boss.
Information and power. 1. Control over information flow. Based on legitimate power. Relates to formal communication network. 2. Coping with uncertainty. More power to those who can help firms cope with uncertainty. Prevention. Forecasting. Absorption.
Power through control of information flow. Wheel formation. Centralized information flow. All channels formation. Decentralized information flow. Yellow. High information control. Blue. Low information control.
Contingencies of power. Substitutability. Centrality. Discretion. Visibility.
Increasing non-substitutability. 1. Few or no alternatives to the resource. 2. Increase non-substitutability by controlling the resource. Exclusive right to perform medical procedures. Control over skilled labor. Exclusive knowledge to repair equipment. 3. Differentiate resource from others.
Centrality. 1. Degree and nature of interdependence between power holder and others. 2. Centrality is a function of how many others are affected by you. How quickly others are affected by you.
Discretion and visibility. 1. Discretion. The freedom to exercise judgment. Rules limit discretion, limit power. Also a perception, acting as if you have discretion. 2. Visibility. Symbols communicate your power sources. Educational diplomas. Clothing, etc. Stethoscope around neck. Salience. Location. Others are more aware of your presence. Influencing others. Influence is any behavior that attempts to alter someone's attitudes or behavior. Applies one or more power bases. Process through which people achieve organizational objectives. Operates up, down and across the organizational hierarchy. Types of influence. Silent authority. Following requests without overt influence. Based on legitimate power, role modeling. Common in high-power distance cultures. Assertiveness. Actively applying legitimate and coercive power, vocal authority. Reminding, confronting, checking, threatening. Types of influence continued. Information. Manipulating others' access to information. Withholding, filtering, rearranging information. Reduces uncertainty. Coalition formation. Group forms to gain more power than individuals alone. Pools resources, power. Legitimizes the issue. Power through social identity. Types of influence continued. Upward appeal. Appealing to higher authority. Includes appealing to firm's goals. Alliance or perceived alliance with higher status person. Persuasion. Logic, facts, emotional appeals. Depends on persuader, message content, message medium, audience. Type of influence continued. Ingratiation, impression management. Increase liking by, or perceived similarity to, the target person. Exchange. Increase liking by, or perceived similarity to, the target person. Consequences of influence tactics. Resistance. People oppose the behavior desired by the influencer. Compliance. Motivated by external sources, rewards, to implement request. Commitment. Identify with and highly motivated to implement request. Consequences of influence tactics continued. Commitment. Compliance. Resistance. Persuasion. Ingratiation and impression management. Exchange. Silent authority. Upward appeal. Coalition formation. Information control. Assertiveness. Soft influence tactics. Hard influence tactics. Contingencies of influence tactics. Soft tactics generally more acceptable than hard tactics. Appropriate influence tactic depends on influencer's power base, organizational position, cultural values and expectations. Power and influences through social networks. Cultivating social relationships with others to accomplish one's goals. Social networks are important foundations of power for individuals, and companies apply social network analysis tools to discover who has this power. There are cultural differences in the norms of active network involvement. Social capital and sources of power. Social networks generate power through social capital, the goodwill and resulting resources shared among members in a social network. Social networks can increase expert power, gaining knowledge from others. Visibility. Referent power. Understanding networks. Networks benefit individuals through access, timing and referrals. Person A has high betweenness, closeness and degree, number, centrality. Person F has low betweenness, closeness and degree, number, centrality.
Strong ties, weak ties, many ties. Breadth, number, diversity of people in network. Depth, frequency of interaction, strength of attachment. Members serve more than one function. Centrality, position within the network. Network centrality. Person's importance in a network. 3 factors in centrality. Shortest path between others, you control interactions of others. Direct access to others, less dependence on others for connections. Number of people connected to you, more social capital resources. Example, A has highest network centrality due to all 3 factors, B has lowest centrality. Building and maintaining network. We often build networks according to self-similarity and proximity. However, it is more effective to build networks according to shared activities and apply strategic considerations, access to additional networks, key persons etc. We also need to consider the dark side of our networks and how inclusive or unfairly exclusive they are. Organizational politics. Behaviors that others perceive as self-serving tactics for personal gain at the expense of other people and possibly the organization. Conditions for organizational politics. Conditions supporting organizational politics. Tolerance of politics. Scarce resources. Organizational change. Complex and ambiguous decisions. Minimizing political behavior. Introduce clear rules for scarce resources. Effective organizational change practices. Suppress norms that support or tolerate self-serving behavior. Leaders role model organizational citizenship. Give employees more control over their work. Keep employees informed. Summary. Power is the capacity to influence others, and it can be based on 5 sources of power with 4 contingencies. People can also gain power through social networks, creating social capital. There are 8 types of influences tactics, with soft ones more likely to result in commitment. Power is potential, influence is actual, and politics is a perception.
Power and influence in the workplace. Chapter 10.